All right, hear me out. There is a difference in the coffee bean color unroasted depending on where the coffee was grown. This coffee bean looks a lot different than this coffee bean, and they're from completely different countries, and they have different coffee varieties, different plants, different elevation. I'm going to show you the difference. We'll start off with two African continent coffees. One is from Burundi, the other one is from Ethiopia. The processing is dry process, which they're going to be the same, and the variety, which means the type of coffee plant that it comes from. The Ethiopian is an heirloom, which basically means there are too many different types of coffee plants that you can't really narrow it down to the type of plant that it is. It's all Arabica, but there are different types of varieties of Arabica around the world. The Burundi is a Bourbon variety, which is a very good variety of coffee plants. So what you can notice right off the bat is the Burundi bean is a little bit bigger than the Ethiopian. But let's actually pick some of these up so you can really see the color difference. Just because they are from the same continent doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to look exactly the same. Like I said, there's different varieties, and this Ethiopian one is a lot smaller, but let's see if we can get close enough. One of the things you'll notice right off the bat with these two coffee beans is that the Ethiopian one's smaller. It also has a little bit more of the outer layer still on the bean. They're naturally processed, so most of the time it takes a little bit more work to get off that outer layer of it, but this one has a little bit more than usual. The one from Burundi has a little bit less. As I kind of turn these over a little bit, you can kind of see there is less of the outer layer on it, but it's a little difficult to see the main color difference. But the one on the right, the Burundi, is going to be a little bit more green than the one on the left, which is the Ethiopian one. The Burundi is, I would say, more of a grassy green color, and the one on the left, the Ethiopian, is a little more brown green. I just showed you coffees from the same continent. Now we have coffees from multiple continents. We have a Nicaragua, an Ethiopia, and a Costa Rica. Let me kind of tell you the differences in the varieties and the processing, because they actually do factor into how the coffee will look. You'll notice here that there is a dry and a wet process. The difference between the dry process and the wet process is basically this. So the dry process, which you may also hear the natural process, is after the coffee cherries have been harvested, they are laid out in the sun for a few weeks so that they can shrivel up and be ready to have the outer skin pulled off. Once that skin has been pulled off, they are ready to be washed, and then they can be packaged. For the wet process, they don't leave the coffee cherry sitting in the sun for a few weeks. They take off the cherry, the outer cherry, immediately, and then they run it through a bunch of water to start processing it. They will then ferment it to get off the outer section of the coffee bean. So that's the difference between a wet process coffee and a dry or natural process coffee. Some of the main differences I see here are the colors of the beans. They're very different. The Nicaraguan one is, I would say, a little bit more brown to it, has a little bit brown coat. The Ethiopian is very light green, I would say even smooth as well. The Costa Rican, I would say, is a little gray. It has a really interesting kind of gray hint to it. Let me grab a few and kind of show you. So that's one of them. And I'm gonna grab two of the Nicaraguan and put them right next to it so that you can see the difference here in the color. So if you can see that, the ones on the right here are the Costa Rican. They are a bit gray, kind of even a bluish tint to it, with an underlining green color to it. And then the ones on the left look a bit more brown green. Now, let me see if I can scoot these ones over and put the Ethiopian right in the middle, because that one has a real big difference to the color. So the Ethiopian is a very light green compared to these. So there we go. I would say gray, light green, and a brown green. So Nicaragua, Ethiopia, and Costa Rica. So the Costa Rican is a wet processed coffee, as we can see here. The variety is a Caturra and Catuai. Very good varieties. I have bought many Costa Ricans that are those varieties. They're very good. The Ethiopian, as I mentioned earlier, the Ethiopian is an heirloom variety, which means it could be a bunch of different types of coffee plants. These are all Arabica, but there are different varieties. And then the Nicaragua is just Caturra. An heirloom variety in Ethiopia is very common because over the years there were many different types of coffee plants that were planted, and it was very difficult for the farmers later on in the years to really know which plants were there. So it's easier just to say it's a variety. What factors most into the color of the coffee beans is where they were grown. So the different countries, the elements, the environment, how much water they got will always factor into it. Because even if they are from the same country even, they may look different depending on which side of the mountain range they're sitting on. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave a comment if you have any questions about the colors. I can make more videos about them. I can also talk a little bit more about the difference in the colors after they've been roasted as well. And I can go into more detail about the dry process, the wet process, and even the different coffee varieties, because there are many of them. A lot of countries just have specific varieties that they like to grow or that are better to grow in their climate. So I can also go into those details. But if you like this video, please give a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next one.